makes sense. Your last name makes me nervous.
Vaglica.
Vaglica.
You say Vaglica too.
That's all I know in my head.
I wear a badge of honor on that.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Nathan Mansfield Show, a show where we talk all things masculinity, entrepreneurship, and being the best version a man can be. And I've got two special guests today here, Landon and Antonio, who came here from Florida and
Florida/Philadelphia, whatever. Yeah.
Headquartered out of Tampa, GFG Solutions. They're the co-owners of GFG Solutions, who help entrepreneurs. As Antonio said, they're the general contractor for basically all financial services for business owners. So excited to have you guys on the show. Antonio and I know each other. Partially, I'm a client of his. Landon, we just met. But guys, it's going to be awesome to have you guys on the show. So excited, so grateful for you guys coming here just for this. Y'all popped in for like 18 hours just to really come talk to me and the team and see what we got going on here at Crucible. So excited and blessed to have you guys here.
We're excited to be here as well, man. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
The world.
Well, guys, I want to dive. In the beginning of the show, I like to dive just basically into your story. It doesn't have to be a super comprehensive detail, but like what really makes you from maybe high school to where you've landed now and what you find yourself doing now. So Antonio, we can start with you.
Sure.
Just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'll keep it inside of the context of both me and Landon since we're on the show. So we can fast forward to high school days. Landon and I, and I'll speak a little bit for Landon, we both literally, sports was our life. And
okay.
Landon played football, I played baseball. And somehow we found ourselves recruited to play at this all-boys boarding school in North Carolina. This small school in Asheville, North Carolina. We graduated with 40 kids, high school. And so our parents shipped us off there. Not the only reason is because we begged them to, not because it was like a military school or anything like that. And the second that I met Landon, we had connected immediately because of the fact that we were the only two kids from the North. They called us the Yankees. And so with that, we had a really deep connection. He convinced me to play on the football team. And I was the slowest guy on the team and the number one receiver at the same time because we had just such a really good connection both on and off the fields. And so with that, play there for 2 years. We both reclassified, so redid our junior year to get recruited. Then went on to play college sports. Stayed in contact after college, and then after college, I was supposed to continue down the path of playing professional baseball, and instead decided to quit on myself. Turned to drugs, alcohol, bad relationships, going back to my ex-girlfriend, which is way worse than drugs and alcohol. And so with that, sparked like 6 to 8 months of like severe depression.
Wow.
And then I met a couple people that taught me the importance of personal development, helped me get into sales, and those are kind of synonymous at the same time. And then I contacted Landon again, and Landon was in sales on the financial services side, and we hit it off, and then the rest was history. We started a podcast together. That podcast started to really explode. I don't know how deep you want me to go into the story, but basically, when we started that podcast, that pretty much changed the entire trajectory of our lives without knowing it. We were two 22-year-olds at the time, and we were going to make the podcast about us, like being self-employed and not knowing what the hell to do with life. And we shortly realized nobody wants to listen to the two 22-year-olds talk about success when we have none of it. So we started to leverage successful business owners like yourself to come on the show and started to ask them questions from a lens that our viewership would want to hear. Selfishly, we just wanted to ask questions that we couldn't afford to ask, and it was free mentorship for us.
Incredible.
Once we started to hear them talk about that stuff, we started to actually take action on their advice, on what they were saying on the podcast, and became valuable enough to actually bring a value proposition to them on the back end of every podcast. So we would just go for it, whether it was like asking for referrals to people that they know that could come on the podcast or trying to bring our actual business proposition to them. Over time, that sparked significant amount of joint ventures. And we both quit our jobs, started a sales agency. They were sending over thousands of leads through affiliates with the people that we were meeting on the podcast. We've been doing that podcast 5 times a week for the last 5 years.
5 times a week?
5 times a week.
Holy shit.
And we have stayed consistent. Our brand is consistency wins. And what it means to us is taking this really daunting goal of what do I want to achieve in 1 year and dialing it down to this micro of like, what can I do today to become a better man, become a better version of myself, get to where I want to be, and just win in the micro, because as athletes, as high performers, we're trying to hit the home run every single time, and then we lose momentum. How can I just continuously compound momentum? And it's kind of got us to where we are today. So
That's
I know
good,
long-winded, but
no, not at all. I mean, all that was vital. A couple questions that sparked my curiosity. So did you guys both go to this high school for all 4 years?
No, so we reclassified. We both finished junior year of high school. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, junior year.
And then redid our junior year at this school because we were like young enough to qualify for that, so that we can get 2 years of exposure to schools down south for sports. Because you only go to that school if your parents are rich or if you're good at sports, and we were the latter.
So you guys spent 2 years at that school.
Yep.
Wow. So they're like you got a house somewhere in North Carolina and went to school there. No parents, or how does that work?
We were in dorms.
Dorms.
Yeah.
So
it's
learn how to
basically
do our
going
own
to
laundry.
college
Yeah, it was
when
basically
you're,
college,
when
yeah.
you're in high school age.
Our school was an all boys school. It's called Christ School. All boys boarding school, goes from 8th grade all the way up to 12th grade. So there were literally 8th graders there, moving away from home for the first time. How old are you when you're in 8th grade? Like 13, 14 years
Crazy.
old, sometimes 12. Who knows? Like these little boys are moving in, and we had already been in public school for a few years in that normal cliche American high school setting.
Yeah.
And we come down to North Carolina to move away from home and play a sport, get to reclass, so you get an extra year to grow, maybe an extra year to mature a little bit, get recruited more, get more scholarship offers. Best thing we ever did. I'll speak for both of us. I'd say it's literally been the catalyst for all of our momentum, because our whole lives, our identity was, for me, it was I'm the quarterback. From age literally 4 years old, I played quarterback all the way through college.
You look like a quarterback.
Or a kicker, or an end and then for him, it was the same thing with baseball. And so we kind of carried that momentum through high school. We stayed in touch through college. And then, like he had mentioned, we both ended up kind of in the same industry by accident.
Wow.
And then we reconnected even deeper. We'd always been really close and stayed in touch through college. I'd come up to see him. He'd come down to see me off and on. But, like, it was just by chance. We both were going through the same identity crisis at the same time.
Wow.
We went from being the man on campus to being like a has-been type of thing.
Yeah.
So now we kind of grew together and found this journey, together in a cool way.
So there's weird things sparking my curiosity. So how often do you see your parents at boarding school?
I would go home more frequently than less.
Like-
I would
like
always
once or
find
twice
some
a month
random
you'd go
reason.
home.
Like, oh, my sister has a dance recital, this, that.
So monthly?
Probably quarterly.
Quarterly.
Yeah, right. Like maybe every 2 months.
For me, it was like once every 4 or 5 months. So I was a little bit more.
Would your
on an
parents come
island.
see you?
Yeah, they'd come. My dad would come to the games. Mom would come to the games. You were a lot better with the back. You would make some appearances for sure.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend back home, and so that was
Good
like
reason to go home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
A little more compelling.
So I was going there for my parents. But
I didn't have a girlfriend until my senior year, and that's when I started wanting to graduate early and trying to go home a lot. But before that, I was hanging out a good bit down there.
Dang.
Yeah,
That's quite
Great
a journey.
times.
I mean, I can imagine as a high school kid, you don't really want to be around your parents much anyways, just because of that season of life. But then I can imagine being a parent and just sending your kid off. And like, I imagine that's challenging.
Well, it's also tough for us. Like, we're locked up in a boarding school, all guys. Like, you're 16 years old. Like,
Right.
your testosterone's like starting to shoot up
Yeah.
like crazy, and all your buddies are back home on Instagram, Snapchat, like going to parties and hanging out with
Doing
people.
cool stuff, yeah.
So it taught us. It teaches a lot. It taught a lot of discipline for me, at
I
least.
can imagine.
Like, I didn't really do much of any partying in high school.
Yeah.
I didn't really dabble into any of that until I got to college, and
Yeah.
I had to almost correct myself when I got to college.
I bet.
But I was also we were also both used to living away from home at that point, where everyone else was getting adjusted to that. So
Yeah.
it kind of offset. Yeah.
I want to dive a couple more things, and then Landon, I want to hear part of your story.
Sure.
I know they're somewhat similar, but I'm sure you have a different piece. But so you mentioned going to college. Did you play sports in college? You said
Yeah,
yes.
baseball.
Baseball.
Yep.
Because you were considering going professional. And then you mentioned after college, you began to dive kind of into some different nasty things, right?
Yep.
Into alcohol, drugs, and bad girlfriends.
Yep.
At what was that, like 22, 23?
That was at age 22. That was
22.
2019.
Okay.
So not it's crazy how quickly things evolve over time. Like, I
Yeah,
look back,
yeah.
it's like, wow, that's kind of wild. But yeah, it was the same thing that Landon was alluding to, identity loss. I knew nothing other than baseball. It was like,
Yeah.
I got really good grades, but it wasn't because I was good at schools, because I manipulated my way through all of
Yeah.
it. I found ways to cheat, which was actually ended up being more valuable than actually like the earth science that you learn in your senior year.
Absolutely.
Like, finding ways to manipulate the system actually taught me a lot more. But with that, I just didn't know who I was. And I resorted to, I was never a bad person, but I just resorted to just terrible habits because I had no idea what to do. And I always grew up super upper middle class. So I always say my only problem was that I had no problems. So I didn't really understand how to deal with adversity other than like when I was striking out in baseball and stuff. And
Wow.
like, I don't like to talk too much of myself on that side, but I was really, really good at baseball. So like the failure rate wasn't as high to really teach me the adversity that I really
Wow.
needed to be humbled with.
Wow.
And then I found God. in 2020, and that
on the
changed
back
my
end
life.
of all this.
Yeah, on
Or
the
in
back
middle
end of
of
it. Yeah, in the middle of all of it, I would say. Yeah.
So walk me through this. So obviously college ends and you begin dabbling somewhere in there into drugs, alcohol, all this stuff. At what point is it just getting just to the point like you know that there's like to walk me through the point of reconciliation?
There was a triggering point that I like to call it, or like a catalyst. I remember driving my car one day, and I still have this video on my phone. I cry every time I watch it. It's a 6-minute video, and I was driving in my car, and I took a video of myself, like it was like that look in the mirror of the moment, like disgust, like what are you doing with your life? Like you have so much potential, but you can't stay consistent. You can't follow through on your commitments. You know, you're really good when people are watching, but you have no integrity behind the scenes, etc.
Wow.
And I consider that my knock on the door to the universe. Like I was ready for something else. And right after that, funny enough, I got introduced to a couple people, and my first entrepreneurship, my first taste of entrepreneurship was actually with network marketing. And I'm not in network marketing. It lasted for like 6 months, but it got me this massive wave of momentum of learning like personal development. And at one of those conferences is when there was an altar call, and I gave my life to Jesus Christ, and it was insane. And through that, I just rode momentum. It has not been smooth sailing. It's always ups and downs, but that sparked my personal growth journey, where I've come to find that the only time when you start to experience ruts in your life is when you're probably not 100% on the personal growth side. So all you have to do is really figure out the personal growth side, and everything else trickles down from itself. So
Right. So in this mess, you're dabbling in things because you don't know who you are. So you're finding things that are probably numbing the loss of sports and the loss of identity. And you mentioned you were consistent at nothing. And it's interesting because probably in the worst period of your life, you were consistent at nothing. And then it's now your motto for your company, consistency wins.
Yep.
And now it's everything. How walk me through the transition of being, I can imagine in sports, you're consistent in everything, practice, everything, because it's your whole life, right? So all of a sudden you're trying to find that same thing outside, but you're obviously failing at it dramatically. So what was the transition for you like going from this depth of your life that's terrible and dabbling in things that are not good for you to finding Jesus and building consistency? Was it a quick thing, or was it because you had that pattern behavior from sports, or was it just it was a struggle to get there?
I think I had to remind myself of what got me to where I was when I was playing in sports, and the habits that it takes to then get to a certain point. And we're now playing like the infinite game, where there's no like finality to any of this, whether it's your spiritual life or even business. Is like you can try and put metrics to it, but like then the year starts over again. Like at least in sports, there's an end to the game, right? Somebody wins and somebody loses. And so with that, I started to actually start gamifying my life, because I started to realize like, okay, I have an ego. Let me go figure out how to use this ego for good. Yeah. And this ego needs to win, but let's just find ways for it to win in a healthy manner. And so it started with like just like making my bed. And then for me on the fitness side, as I'm sure you can allude to this. I mean, I don't know when the last time you were out of shape was, but I was super out of shape at the time. And so with that, when you're out of shape, it's just like your life, just you can't like do anything really.
Right.
So I was like, I go to the gym, I work out really hard, but then 3 weeks later, I can't go to the gym anymore because I'm like burnt out from it. I'm working too hard. So I was like, how do I keep this as a consistent lifestyle to keep going to the gym? And so I just started by showing up by walking around the block. And then I started walking around the block a little bit further. And then I started running. And then it turned into triathlons. And then it turned into going to the gym every day.
Wow.
And we ran a marathon. So like all those things started to stack. And so I started to realize, especially when it comes to fitness, like you start to see gains relatively quick if you're out of shape. And so it's like, wow, if I just keep doing this, that gains momentum. That makes me happy. I like feeling happy. So let me just go get these wins everywhere in my life. Wow. And then I turned it into a system.
Yeah. That's what I really want people listening to hear what Antonio's saying, is that at Crucible we build a lot of systems, because I think that systems and tools, tactics are the way to, implement something to build that consistency over time. And it sounds like one thing that I love that you said is it started with making my bed. And so so many people, especially that join our group and that I've helped and coached, are always just looking at the big thing. Like they want to go be the all-star sports guy. They want to go build the $1 million business, but they forget that it starts with the most simple thing. I teach it as millimeters over miles. People are always like, well, I want to go run 100 miles like Goggins. Well, like, why don't you just start by walking around your block? Yep. Because it's so defeating trying to go in to something so big when you're so far behind or so you're just nowhere near there. So
Sure.
I think that's such a good story and metaphor for what anybody's walking through, is that it's not about going to try to run the marathon tomorrow. It's like, let's just walk around the block for a few days, right?
Yeah.
So good, man.
For me, the system that I created, because it's funny enough, I don't make my bed anymore. Funny enough, comes full circle. But I created a system called Build.
You should start. I'm gonna check on you.
All right, perfect.
I'm gonna text you every morning.
So I created a system called Build, and if someone that's listening to this is just starting out that wants to create momentum, B stands for body. So what am I doing for my body today? Like, am I checking off the boxes when it comes to, what does my body need today?
Yep.
U is you. So like, what is it that I need? What does my soul need? Like, what do I actually want to do today? Because ultimately we're trying to build this life around what we want to do. I is income. So what am I doing to actually further my income? What are the KPIs that I need to be hitting? Am I making my sales calls? Am I, getting referrals, et cetera? L is love or relationships. How am I continuing to nurture the relationships that I have with my family, with God, with people in business, and then how am I building new ones? And then D is development, personal development. What am I reading? What are my inputs, my podcasts, and all those types of things?
Love that.
I listed that out the night before every day for years, and I would just check those boxes off, and then eventually you learn how to bring intention to it and start to love it.
Yeah.
because you see momentum. And
Right.
Yeah, that's been my
Huge.
system.
Yeah, and then I love what you said too, because all those things done over time compounds and you see progress. And just like we said, you said a piece, and you said, I started to get happy. And what I love, because I've heard this from Tony Robbins 100 times, because I used to listen to him for hours, day after day, but progress equals happiness,
Yep.
right? The true happiness and joy that we find comes from seeing progress in the things that we're putting effort to. And so that probably began to fuel you. And then, once you become happy doing it and you see progress and you want to do it more.
Yep.
I'm actually teaching this today right after this. So
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love that. I had a really big revelation when I was in El Salvador. I go to El Salvador on a wellness retreat every year. And last year, I stopped saying like happy, and I started to find out what brings me joy. Because happy, at least my head was conceptualizing like happiness is a destination for me. Joy is a verb. Joy is like I'm a state of being.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find out things in my life that bring me joy and just stay in that flow so that I can actually achieve presence. Because I always struggle with just being present because I'm always
Yeah.
looking for the next thing.
ADHD
So it's like,
too.
Yeah, exactly.
I could tell you have it like me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm fidgeting in this chair itself. But yeah, just wanted to bring that point because it's been a life changer for me.
Yeah, that's great, man. Landon, let's dive into you, man.
Only thing to add to that is just the environment that you're in. Like all these things are so powerful, but also the environment you're in is like such a crucial piece to like why we were able to, I think, experience some of the growth that we were able to so quick. It's like building a community. We built through our podcast. We built also a community on a WhatsApp where it was probably it grew to like 100 people. It was free. It was a free group. Everyone was just sharing stuff in there. We had a book group. We were all picking a book to read and coming on a Zoom call. Sometimes we get the authors on there, and it just held this like. It created this ecosystem during a time where everyone was locked up in their houses is really when this thing started to really grow, where we were all able to, especially you and I, we were able to like shift our environment where we came from different backgrounds. My background and your background very similar from a standpoint of like where we are now. There's no one around us from our family setting that has accomplished even what we've been able to accomplish so far in life, right? So like we had to really latch onto each other and build our own ecosystem of an environment. That's really the biggest thing I'd wanted to add to that is your environment is everything. You show me a man's environment, I'll show you kind of like where he's going in life. The whole show me your friends, I'll show you your future. You always hear about it, but it's a huge piece. Especially in those earlier years when for anyone listening to this podcast that's starting out or trying to figure out what the next move is, like there's going to be so many people that love and care about you a ton that ultimately may cast some doubt because they're seeing you shift and do something that's outside of the normal what they've seen you do, and that's kind of how you get to that next layer of greatness. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, man, that's so good. The environment is huge.
Yeah.
And that's even relating. It's cool seeing you guys do this because you guys have done this for years now, which I consider brotherhood. I say there's 2 a.m. friends, 2 a.m. brothers, or there's just like your broships or your friendships that you go drink beer with, watch sports with, talk about girls with, all this. And there's a difference. And at the stage of my life, and obviously I see that you guys are here with each other, is you guys are 2 a.m. brothers. You guys would wake up in the middle of the night and go help one another. You'd be there for one another. And so that environment is also way different than just having, just like your casual buddies. And so it's shown now the proof of this concept is that most men don't have really good friends, and then you two, as iron sharpens iron, have been able to create something awesome together by being really good, dialed in friends that probably know the depths of each other.
And what's cool is we started out on the buddy beer side of things.
Yeah.
And we still have a good time together. We still
Sure.
travel and go do cool things together and unplug from business. But I think that's been the coolest part, is to kind of see that evolve.
I'll say one of the
time.
testaments, somewhere along the way, we were able to have a conversation around taking our ego out of it on the business side. And it's no longer this like you versus me type of thing. It was us against the problem. And now we live in this beautiful, healthy state of like really healthy friction, because business partnerships are tough.
Yeah.
But if there's no friction, then the business probably isn't moving forward,
Sure.
because you need to be innovating constantly.
Or someone's just not speaking up.
Right.
Right. It's like someone just being a yes man.
Yep.
Right. If you're not getting challenged by your team, like you got a bunch of, soft people around you
Yep.
that are afraid to ruffle feathers,
So like what we're in a season right now of, because I feel like you guys can relate to this a lot, because it's we're in startup mode right now. It's it's always just this startup mentality. Even 5 years in, it's still this startup mentality.
Love it.
And so with that, when you're in a startup, you have to you're the CEO is the chief everything officer. You're doing everything,
Yeah.
right? Like you're literally there's no job titles. You're malleable and doing pretty much whatever.
Yep.
We started to create a lot more leverage through team, and with that, we started to really dive into who we are as humans, and kind of realize that like who we are as humans is actually the opposite of who we're performing as in the workplace. So no longer are we going to start resenting each other for how we perform in the workplace, and we're going to start building the business around who we actually are, so that we constantly stay in this state of flow. And there might be a gap that we have to fill with another human to actually do the things that we both don't like. Because a lot of the times there was some resentment building up, because like he would be in a seat or I would be in a seat of things that like we don't like doing, and it wouldn't be to the performance of the standard that we wanted to keep. And it ended up being that me versus you thing, instead of like, hey, we probably just shouldn't be doing this in general. Somebody else should be doing this, or we should leverage software, et cetera. So that's been the new season we're in, is like this massive self-discovery phase.
That's really good.
Culture index.
Really good.
That's
Yeah,
what it was. The culture index survey.
What's the test? The DISC assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disc assessment,
Game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think being able to, one of the things I heard that's really important that I've tried to exercise in my marriage and in friendships is the disassociating the person with the problem. Because I think when you start in business partnerships, I tell these guys all the time that, and they know this, but business partnerships are like marriage. It's like you're tied in. It's a legal thing. It's not like you just plug in and run away one day or do what you want. It's like, no, we're tied now.
Yep.
Because there's legality things, and it's a team. But I think the biggest way to navigate conflict is what you just said. It's you got to take the problem and isolate it and attack the problem and not the person, because that can happen really easily.
Jocko Willing talks about it's the mission is all that matters in this sense, right? So it's like all of our egos have to get subsided. We're all great, high-performing businessmen on this team. It's all about this mission first. And the ego doesn't matter. Like, yes, we might ruffle some feathers and hurt some feelings, but it's all in the sense of we want to create this mission. And for you guys, it's to help this, especially in services, because you're working with so many people one-on-one, like their experience matters the most. That's at least how we've rationalized this thing, is like, hey, like we might ruffle some feathers internally, but all of it is for the sake of our clients.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Landon, run me through a speed shot of just kind of more things that maybe he didn't cover. Obviously, we know that you sports athlete, quarterback. Talk to me more about just your journey through life to this point.
Yeah, grew up with, my dad was a police officer, stay-at-home mom. Me and my little brother were like 16 months apart, so we're like Irish twins.
Nice.
Wrestled, played football, played baseball, kind of normal like middle class suburban upbringing. Parents.
Where at? Where'd you go?
Delaware.
Delaware, that's right.
Yeah. Always had. We were kind of a paycheck to paycheck family, but my parents always put us first. So like traveling for sports and making things always happen, always making sure that they put us first as far as opportunities go athletically. And then, school was always an important piece. So when, you heard the timeline of kind of where we went from high school to college and played sports in college, like I did pretty well in that setting for the most part. However, there was always this like little ceiling that I couldn't break through at times. I was like, when I was in Delaware and playing high school football before I went down to the boarding school, I was like the starter some weeks, some weeks I wasn't. I was in a really weird offense where we weren't throwing the ball a bunch. So there's like I was kind of trying to find who I was for a good bit. When I got down to Christ School for our boarding school, I kind of fell into myself a little bit. I kind of molded into myself a lot more. I got to college, and then I worked really hard, but I was, for the first time, living away from home, being able to drink beer with girls around. So that was a new experience while also playing football. So I definitely think I left some meat on the bone in college, and I have that kind of to live with in a way. But I definitely had a great time. And then, when I got out of that, I looked back and I was like, okay, ultimately, I didn't go to college to go to the NFL. That's not why I went to play college football. I went there to get a good experience, play football for an extra few years. I even coached for a year. My 5th year, I actually coached on the team. So ultimately had a great experience. But I think the biggest piece is like all of that. I thought I was, for a long time, my whole life, I thought I was training and doing all these things to be on some big stage. When I realized recently, within the last year, all of that preparation was really to be in the seat that I'm in now, to be a leader in the form that I'm in now, to be able to continue to grow people and change lives, our clients' lives, our team and our staff's lives, and our lives. So that's like the one of the biggest things. And I had this revelation to some extent when I was in the car with my dad a few months ago, and he was like, "Hey, so like, do you have regrets about football? Like, you didn't really you didn't pan out the way we thought you were going to." Basically, is what he said to me. And I was like, honestly, no, because where I'm at now, the place that I'm in life right now, I'm so grateful for the direction things are going in. I wouldn't want to change. I'd be afraid to change anything now at this point. Like I'd be afraid to change any decisions that were made or anything, because it's given me the perspective to be where I'm at now. And I think the same thing goes for you with baseball. So I don't know really where I added much. It just kind of gave a little bit more color to like the upbringing.
Yeah.
But
so then you graduate college and you start in sales. Is that right?
I started at Northwestern Mutual.
Okay.
So basically, you wear a financial advisor tag on your chest, but you're really just selling life insurance.
Yep.
And so he was at New York Life basically doing the same thing. And we were like, what the hell is this? Like, what are we doing here? We're calling ourselves these financial professionals, and like, why is the solution to every problem whole life insurance? Like, what is this? So not to get too into the weeds on the lingo industry wise, but like that was like a weird red flag for us. And so from that moment, we had this podcast that had nothing to do with what we did for work. It was just like more on the self-development side. From that moment of us having that revelation, though, that we were in the right industry but in the wrong boats, essentially, it was kind of like a 2-year timeline of us getting out of the boats we were in and hopping in the same boat. And so that's where we obviously collided with Claudio and started merging with him. We were in an old agency that was way more independent than New York Life or Northwestern, but still had some constraints around it. And so then you fast forward about 1.5 to 2 years of us in that old brokerage that was an independent brokerage. Then we moved to a full independent firm now where we do business advisory, tax consulting, estate, legacy, exit planning, asset protection, everything. That's kind of our role now for our clients. So mainly entrepreneurs and their families. That's like our pocket.
That's great, man. So I want you guys to walk me through so you guys are both kind of doing the same thing in different companies. And then you guys kind of have a conversation, like maybe there's something different here. Maybe we should do something. Maybe we should start a partnership. Is that how this kind of went?
Yeah. When we had the momentum creating from the podcast, we were like, all right, there's enough momentum going on from some of these like affiliate partnerships and these joint venture partnerships where like, hey, let's just like break away and be fully independent. And in that model, it allows us to continue doing business, but it's not like it didn't need an operating agreement. It wasn't like a structured business. It was like the money was still flowing to each other individually, but you're able to like code business together.
We both had licenses.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was still under the umbrella of like just wealth management planning. And then about 1.5 years ago, we completely just sold all of it and spun off all of it and started a consulting brand, which is like a full-time partnership, like real business. It's been awesome, but it's been a like the transition early was tough because you go from this self-employed model of like, oh, I could just go sell more stuff and I make more money to I go sell something or I take on a client, the business makes money. And then the business has expenses and then I make money. Total different dynamic. And it's like, wow, my lifestyle was a little bit bloated. Where do I have to make sure that I'm not spending $30,000 a month on food? Not that I actually spent $30,000 a month on food. So yeah, that was the big shift for us. And then it's been so fun because every challenge that we've had, we can now have the experience to advise our clients. And then every challenge that our clients have, we are now a layer along the way that are learning, and we're learning so hands-on and trying to be as hands-on and as a part of it as possible, so we can help other clients to, not go through the same thing.
Love it. Was there a point, was that such an easy decision for you guys when you guys went into the actual LLC or whatever you guys are into the business? Yeah. Was that an easy decision? Was that a hard decision? Did it take a lot of sacrifice? Walk me through like that beginning steps of that, and was there a lot to think about, or was it just like, we're just doing this thing and let's go?
So I'll answer for myself, because I think that the decisions were there's a different answer for both of us. For me, it was like the easiest decision of my life. I'm a very impulse decision maker. It's like, all right, can I live with the downsides if this fails? The second that answer is even remotely yes, I'm like, all right, cool, done, burn the boats. He's more calculated for sure. So I'll let you tell your story. But for me, it was like, I felt it in my heart, and I knew God that was leading to me where I wanted to go. All the signs were there. I was like, all right, perfect. Let's roll.
Yeah. I mean, I am a little bit more on the calculated side. Ultimately, I'm still like very like big of a risk taker, but I like to make sure the boat's not burning and sinking into the water before I jump over to it, right? Like that was kind of my analogy towards it when we were going through this. But we had a lot of really deep relationships with the people at that old brokerage firm that we were with, like really, really long-term relationships, people that ultimately are the reason we even met our third business partner, Claudio, to begin with. Wow. They've poured a lot of money and time and energy into our growth and our training and everything. So like, there was a lot of loyalty to that and a lot of appreciation to that. I was there first before I brought him over. So like before I got him into the same boat with me for us to actually start our own independent firm. So like I had this emotional attachment for sure. And I also wanted to make sure that we weren't jumping into a burning building when we did decide to fully go independent, which ultimately the decision itself long-term, like we constantly would zoom out and say, okay, like sure, the next year or two might be a little bit turbulent, might be figuring some things out, but like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what's the consumer, what is our client avatar going to demand from us, and how can we offer that to them? It wasn't staying in our old situation. It wasn't, we were handcuffed. I mean, clients, they want to be served a certain way, and I think the future of our industry is going to be is being able to give advice for advice sake. And if any products or tools or strategies are needed, cool, let's go find them in the financial world, but we shouldn't have to lead with that in order to work with someone to give them advice on things. And that's kind of how most of the industry is set up right now.
Yeah.
90+% of it, it's like, hey, I'd love to help you here, but you have to basically buy this product or invest money with me for me to work with you. That's a lot of how these firms are set up. So long term, we're just very bullish on the fact that being truly non-biased and being truly independent is going to be where we're going to grow the most. So
it's good. The reason I asked that question is because part of the work that we do at Crucible is we believe that freedom, a way to freedom is entrepreneurship. Is many times people get stuck into a 9-to-5 job that they actually don't like. The subconscious programming of it just continues to get you to wake up and do the same thing over and over again. Before you know it, you wake up when you're 45, 50, and you're like, man, what have I been doing with my whole life? You guys obviously were able to snap out of that, because had you stayed with New York Life and Western Mutual, I'm sure you guys, till you were 35, 40, you'd probably be miserable. Yep. So so happy that you guys took that leap. And part of the reason I asked that too is because I want to inspire the listeners of the men that listen to this to go chase their dreams and take the risk and do something that scares them, and to jump into something that would be fulfilling to them. So that's kind of the reason that I asked that, because I want people to be inspired by the entrepreneurial journey and to see guys do it and do it successfully, even though the journey has not probably been easy for you. I want people to see what you guys have done and be inspired by that journey. Because for me, when I was in the military, active duty, I was stationed at Fort Carson, deploying a lot. Had never considered opening a supplement store, but I heard of a guy that was active duty that was running a supplement store, and it was by his story alone that was like, if he can do it, I can do it too. I believe that a lot of people are just hiding behind fear, but sometimes stories inspire us to take that leap. And so, my hope is that someone just hears this today and goes, yeah, you know what, I have been living in this place that I'm very unhappy, and I can do what these two guys have done. I can do what Nathan's done, because they're no different than me. And so that's, part of the philosophy that I teach too. One thing that I want to recognize you guys for is you guys, obviously, like you just spoke, Landon, do things differently than any other financial services company that I've ever, the interactions that you and I had, the conversations that you and I have had, blow my mind, because I nobody acts or does business like you. It's usually like you said, Landon, it's a service for $1 transactional kind of thing. And you guys seem to have figured out early in the game, because I think you guys are both in your 20s.
Yep, 27.
Yeah.
Same.
27.
Yeah, we're like a month apart.
You guys have seemed to figure out at a very young age how to lead with service and quality of service and taking care of your customer really well. I think that from my experience and what I've seen in the world is that typically in the 20s, especially with men, we lead with self, trying to build my own empire, build my own thing, build money, right? And I'm sure that's important to every single person, but usually it's guys navigate to that in their 30s. They start going, okay, I actually want to take care of people better, and then the money will reciprocate, right? Mm-hmm. So it seems like you guys have figured this out very early, how to treat customers. In fact, I've told probably 15 people, if not 20 people, the story of you send me the 2 tomahawks with the knives. And I show people the knives every time they come to my house. It's just, for people listening to this, essentially I'm a client of Landon and Antonio's, and after I had signed with them, he knows that I eat a lot of meat, and so he had sent me this surprise package. One day I got a knock on the door, and it was like UPS, and I was like, I didn't order. I don't order anything to my house except for Amazon, and so I open it up, and it's 2 tomahawk steaks and custom steak knives, and I still use those steak knives 3 or 4 times a week.
Love that.
But like that alone, and then that's just the surface, Antonio, based upon the conversations we've had and the things you've helped me. It's like every time I have a problem, you have a solution, or you go find a solution, and that's such a rare thing to find. What is it what instilled this in you guys? Because it's not normal. It's really not. Where did this come from, and what has it led to in your company?
I'll just go short. I know you're going to have a good answer. Older and more successful people, we were just basically seeing what they were doing and trying to replicate that inside of our industry and also outside. Claudio being one of them.
Yeah. We're really good copycats. We find people who are where we want to be, and we just dissect every single thing they do and then put our own twist on it. And I'm a big believer in like investing radically into yourself. Mm-hmm. Like no matter what the financial or time burden is, and we spend a lot of time and money just acquiring the skill set that it takes to be semi-successful in business. Mm-hmm. And so once you acquire that skill set, specifically like communicating with people and serving people and really understanding how that mechanism works, you're not really ever going to have to worry about like being able to get food or like you're not going to go starving, right? So with that, we can delay the gratification of upfront money because we just want to find people to do life with. So like, for example, like as much as you're interviewing me during that process of like, is this guy the right fit? Like I'm doing the same thing there, because when we take on a client, we're looking for a lifetime partnership. Yeah. And I just want to find someone that I could do life with, someone that I could fly into San Antonio with and, just have, break bread with and have a podcast with, because it's fun. It's really fun. Like what's the downside to taking that risk? That's the way at least I think about it, is like, will I live with this decision? Like I'm not going to die. Mm-hmm. And is the risk worth the reward? If I could check those 2 boxes off, let's go. And we love services so much because you can realize the time to value so much quicker for clients because you can make a tangible impact wherever they're at. Yep. And so we used to take this approach of like, we need to fit this square into a circle because we need to sell a product. Now it's like, what does Nathan need? Nothing else matters. What is Nathan's number 1 priority? And let's go solve that right now. Wow. And so that is our biggest priority right now, is like just being so service oriented, because you could go alone and you could go pretty fast, but if you go together, you go really far. Yeah. That's I probably botched that saying, but that's a big philosophy of ours. Like we are not trying to hoard anything. There's enough room to collaborate for everyone. So
the other thing is like, and I'm sure you've seen this in your time as a coach and through your ventures as a business owner, how many times do people come to you with like wanting advice, and you give them all this advice and you give it all away, and then they just don't do anything with it? All the time. Like we were in this, still to this day, we will radically like, we go meet with you and you say, hey, you got to read this book. Like it changed my life. I'm ordering it as you're saying it. And then we're going to go back and read it and we're going to talk about it. Like, and we're going to figure out how we can implement it in our life. Wow. Which is like, sounds so simple that literally we just do what people tell us to do. We just actually just implement the advice.
It's so funny he says that. It's because like I make content around this all the time, because people ask us all the time, like, hey, how did you guys get to where you're at, at 27? I literally say, there's the one thing that we did. We asked people who are where we want to be, whenever we got into them, what did they do? Mm-hmm. And they told us to do something. And here's the caveat. We actually did it. Right. We like literally actually did it. Like they told us to listen to this podcast or read the book. We read the book and then gave them feedback and then asked for another one. And we were just hungry. And some people are just, Landon says it all the time, they're window shopping success. Yeah. They want to ask these questions just because they want to show people that like, hey, I'm hungry, but are you actually hungry? Are you actually going to consume what it takes? And this shit ain't easy.
No.
Like it's not easy at all.
No.
And as you continue to grow and as you get better, it gets harder because the threshold to grow is harder.
Yeah.
So
and
with
time,
that,
and
yeah.
time condenses.
Yep.
Collapses.
100%.
You know, as far as like, the more successful you get, the less time you have.
Yep. I think about it all the time. It's like we have it easier than ultra marathon runners because ultra marathon runners, in order for them to get better, they have to go run 20 miles before they're even getting better. I only got to run one before I start getting better. And so with that, it's like I want to continue to build my capacity because that allows me to be more on the elite side because one, it's fun, and two, I can make an impact much bigger.
It's good. And I've got the testimonial of that. I told you about Profit First, and you literally bought the book, read it, and then now you're implementing it and coaching it or something of the sort?
Yeah, we run it for clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to become a Profit First professional by the end of this year too.
Nuts.
Yeah.
And that was fast. And so I want to recognize in this for both of you, and I'm sure you're the exact same way Antonio is, but is the speed of movement.
I'm not as fast as he is.
I'm from New York.
Yeah. No, I get that. And so, Ed Milet says that I live by this, is that successful people move at a different pace.
Yeah.
The gap between learning and doing is very, very short, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's just a testimony to you, is that you didn't hesitate, you didn't stall. It was literally like you went, digested it, did, and like. But what I'm curious is, what do you think the difference is between people who are hungry and want to do more and be better and be successful? But I would just venture to say that the ratio of people that actually take advice and do is so little. What do you think that is that separates?
I don't think they think they deserve it.
That's a worthiness issue.
Yeah.
And I think the worthiness issue stems from not giving themselves enough time of doing the work to actually build the credibility to their subconscious that they are that human, that they are worthy. And so like you can't just do it and expect an outcome. Like you got to do it for a long period of time without seeing any bit of success from it. Then you start to realize a little bit of success, and then you just keep doing it and doing it. And that's all we did, which is we stayed consistent long enough to start seeing results, and then those results get you excited, and then you just want to keep doing it. You just crave it more and more. And so that's where I'm a big believer. Andy Frisella said this, like happiness equals self-confidence, and self-confidence means following through on your word all the time.
Right.
And the only reason that I can attest to that is because I was the person who was the exact opposite. I never followed through on my word, and I saw where that got me, which was not with a professional baseball, as a professional baseball player. And so I have that chip on my shoulder of saying, I'm never going to quit on myself, and I don't care how I look because I've given myself enough time and discipline to be so secure in what I'm doing that I literally don't care how anyone else interprets it.
I was reading this book the other day, and it talked about, it was kind of intriguing to me, because I say that consistency equals competence, competence equals confidence. Mm-hmm. So you do something long enough, you'll be good at it. You're good at it, you're confident in it, right? It's like playing sports, it's like doing anything. Yep. I think Hormozy said something, it was something that blew my mind. If you do something every day for at least 350 days or 340 days in a year, you're better than 80% of the world at that thing, right? Just blew my mind, because I'm like, well, just do something almost every single day. It's why your podcast and why you guys are good communicators and all that. But I dove into this book the other day, and it was talking about the difference between self-confidence as more being an ego thing and worthiness. Because you can be self-confident on the outside and based upon consistency and things, but still feel, which is alludes to what you're saying, Landon, is the worthiness. Do you guys have any insight on that, as like personally, or what you've seen is like how maybe you can be confident by doing the work, but unworthy and still maybe sabotage?
I was texting him today a quote that he shared with me a couple days ago, and I've wrote it on top of. So I keep a legal pad with me, and that's like I just kind of keep my like tasks that I need to just get done that day. I like 5 to 10 tasks that I need to cross off, and I just keep it on a legal pad. Super old school. But on top of that, I usually write like a quote of some sort. And the quote was, if you quit, who else is going to lose? Or if you quit, who else loses? Essentially, like who's depending on you and who's counting on you. And thinking about it that way has helped me with that, because I've battled the imposter syndrome, or I've battled the, hey, like, is this like do I really have enough value to give into this meeting right now? Am I right in this advice that I'm giving, or whatever that is? But I lean back on that quote of, you're going to say it better than I will, I think. But how do you? What's the exact quote? It's like, if you quit, who loses?
It's like who loses if you quit.
Who loses
and it's
if
a
you
great
quit?
journaling exercise, because like it's not like some people think it's just like, oh, my business partners or my clients and stuff. Is like, think of the magnitude of what happens if you just stop and just become, just become useless to society. Like your family, your dog. Like all those people lose and suffer the consequences, and ultimately, you don't give to the world what God tried to give you, and so
which you feel your significance through that exercise.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
So you start to build worthiness through that, and then the other part for me, and this has been really magnified recently, because I'm just like on fire for God of recently, and it's just I'm so excited about it. I want to continue.
Man, I've seen
to
that in your
keep that
stories.
crave.
So proud of you, man.
And so it's like, think about something or someone that you love more than anything in the world. And that is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percentile of how God loves you.
Yeah.
And so like, if you can actually conceptualize that and feel that, like, then you start to realize how worthy you truly are and why we're actually here, and like how like this stuff wasn't just made out of thin air. And that's really comforted me. But if someone has like the ultimate solution, let me know, because I still haven't figured that out.
I understand there's a lot of complexities to this based upon parenting and how your parents spoke to you and whether your parents were present and all this. And I teach a lot of the depths of that because I have many struggles on that side of things based upon the situations I grew up in. But one thing that my pastor said the other day that really hit me was that it's actually a sin to not believe in what God said about you. It's actually a sin to not believe about. And if you read the Bible, what God says about you, I mean, it's definitely far from the things you probably say about yourself, even if you have some sort of confidence in yourself. So that was kind of an awakening for me to go, because someone had asked him that question. And I'm like, dang, that is big. Now, there's trials in navigating that, as sometimes these things are deeply ingrained into you from abuse and all kinds of things. So there's a lot more complexity to that situation. Just all of a sudden believing one day that you're worthy, right? There's a lot to that. But dude, that's so good. And I do want to commend you, man, because like even your stories, like I think we oftentimes minimize the output and what it affects. One thing that you said that really stuck with me is like, who else loses if you quit? One thing I teach to my guys is like, you far underestimate the impact that you'll have on the world as one person. Yeah. It's like every time you have an interaction with someone in a coffee shop, at dinner, your waitress, your kids, your family, your coworkers, your employees, and then you multiply that over day after day, after person, there's a waterfall that over the period of 10, 20 years, one person, even if you're not a highly influential person, can impact tens of thousands of people. And it's like, I think we get so stuck in this little bubble of me and my family and this little circle of 5, the people that I interact with the most, but you don't understand that your sphere of influence is actually tens of thousands of people over the course of 10 years. It's actually, I think, and so when you think about this, who else loses if I quit? Tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people.
It's
I love
crazy.
it. You're in coaching mode right now,
dude,
bro. I see it.
We're literally sitting here because of one decision that we all made.
Yes.
Was to go to Vegas and to go to that event.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Absolutely.
Like, we're all literally sitting here because of one decision we all made.
Yep. And then you shared your testimony on stage.
Yes. Very powerful.
Yeah, man. It's one of the coolest anecdotes that I'll give to that exact point is when we were doing the podcast, we had a man named David Meltzer, if you're familiar with David Meltzer. Great networker, probably one of the best networkers I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And we asked him for referrals for people. He did us one better and gave us his entire podcasting agency. Until this day, this has been 4 years now, we get 10 people a month just getting sent to us, all like our ideal joint venture avatar or client avatar, just really good people to speak with. But he had told us on that podcast that he wants to make 1 billion people happy. And I was like, how do you do that? Like, that doesn't, like, how do you even do that? And then I started to realize, like, all the people that I impact is partly because of David, and he does that to thousands and thousands of people, and that spider web, just continues to create. So yeah, it's really well said. Like, and you don't even have to do it in terms of like actively going to try and make an impact on someone's life. All you have to do is listen. What I've come to find, and as someone who just loves to talk, if I just listen to someone and let them talk about themselves and let them talk and talk and talk, they just feel so much better about themselves. And you're just there to open up an ear, and that makes them feel so much more worthy about themselves. And maybe they'll go impact a life because you listen to them.
That's so true.
So it's now just set out like, hey, how can I just make sure that I'm in a peak state, which is why personal development is so important, because it's not the conversation that you think is going to change someone's life, it's the one that you're not most excited about, that you actually showed up in a peak state, poured into this person, and that changed many thousands of lives.
So good. So good. I want to transition a little bit to a topic that we like to cover a lot, and I cover with every guest here, and it's about masculinity. I think that we are in a critical state of masculinity in the world, and it's why I believe that God has empowered and called me and my team to go do and what we're doing for men is we're helping men become disciplined, helping them form habits. Most men, if you look at the fatherless rate of homes in today's society, as well as not just fatherless as far as dad left and is gone, but also just dad worked and wasn't present. And I think that there's just, that's a big problem. I call it an epidemic in itself. But I would like to hear you guys' perspective on, I'm so grateful that you guys are both men of God, because I think that changes. My version of masculinity changed when I became a Christian, and it's continued to evolve as I've grown a deeper relationship with God. But we'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on the current state of masculinity and what you think a good man is, a good man.
Do hard shit.
Yeah.
Doing things that are difficult, and having, like, as Ben Newman always says, standard over feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you not deviating off of what your standard is. And we live in a society today where masculinity is 100% at risk of it's specifically being like a white male in America right now. It's like we're looked at a certain type of way.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big like identity politics person, but we're in a weird situation now where over specifically the last, I'd say, like 40 to 60 years, we're constantly getting advertised to buy products and things that we probably don't need, and to eat food that we probably don't need to eat, and we're overeating, we're overindulging across the board. And I think we're seeing a push now for this culture to like do hard things, right? Do hard things and pushing yourself every single day and keeping the standard aligned with your commitments. And actually living that out every day, no matter what the situation is. It's as simple as that, in my opinion.
What is Landon? What has doing hard things done for you?
It builds confidence in what you're capable of. And so when you get up in the morning and whatever your morning routine is, if you make it fairly intentional, you're setting yourself up for a great day. And if you're doing hard physical things, I think physical activity is super important. It's not a new thing. It's not a new concept, but like the harder I've trained and the more that I've doubled down in that side of things, it activates some type of primal side of yourself that also translates into business and translates into relationships and translates into self-worth and confidence. Like I've been training for an Ironman for the last 5-6 months since our marathon. And it's like, I feel on a different level, just confidence wise, or just my energy. Everything is in a different space because I know that I'm actually not leaving any meat on the bone. I'm not leaving things on the table. Yeah. Whereas, when I was younger in college or in high school, there'd be times where, I would just dog stuff. Now I'm in a place where I'm like, I can't afford to miss this workout, or I can't afford to, not sprint through the line, or, get the actual 3 hours in on the bike, or whatever that looks like. Because if I don't, my whole family's coming to watch me basically tap out in a race in front of a bunch of people. So it's little things like that, holding you accountable and just proving to yourself you're capable of it. It just translates into everything else in your life, Yeah.
And so the confidence and the tapping into that primal identity, what's the trickle down effect for that for you?
What do you
mean? So you're at your best because you're waking up, pushing yourself hard, doing hard things.
It's just you versus you too. It's just you versus you in the conversation that you have with yourself in the mirror.
Yep.
So
my question is like, you at your best does what for society?
It's a heavy question. Me at my best helps people, become better fathers, better husbands, better wives, better kids, wealthier, hopefully, in our line of work, obviously.
Yeah.
Pay less in taxes as well. No, but what that does beyond that, layers below that, is it impacts multiple generations beyond just my generation, beyond just my lineage.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the way I think about it.
Yeah. Where I was getting with that is, and you answered it. There is a living up to the responsibility and in what you've been called to do is an example for other people, right? And there's a high responsibility of being a man. We're called to be protectors and providers, right? There's nothing light about being a man, but that's where I was getting into. So I think doing hard things is highly important, but the after effects of that is really the impact. I think that I wanted you to allude to, and you really did, is that it affects everything. It affects every interaction, everything, and so man, that's good. I love that you do hard things because I like to do hard things too.
Yeah, that's the name of the game.
How about you?
I was blessed a couple years ago to be recommended books by John Eldredge. John Eldredge is an incredible Christian-based author that talks about the initiation of manhood and how we, over the years of our lives, we were initiated into manhood through our fathers. And as much as I love my dad, he did not do a great job of initiating me into manhood, in my opinion. I think he would say that as well. He did his best, though.
Sure.
There's nothing that he did. Because, like, back when he was growing up and having lived with my grandfather, who's his dad, I completely have so much more empathy to my dad as to why he is the way he is. But there was different ways to have to survive than there is now. And so he did his best, but it wasn't, it's definitely not where I want to be. And so John Eldredge talks about the reinitiation to manhood through God. And how God calls us and reinitiates us through Jesus. And that was a really good book called Wild at Heart and Fathered by God, two really, really awesome books. But then the part of the reason why I had made a decision to go into the professional world instead of play baseball was because I've seen it so many times where people chase this dream and look up 10 years from now, having made no money, end up getting into a ton of debt. They have kids, and then they go into work in a corporate setting, and their kids always wonder where dad's at. I never want my kids to ever worry about where dad's at, ever.
Wow.
And so I'm so hell-bent on building this life of freedom, not just from a financial standpoint, but I don't ever want anything to hold me back to experience the things that I want to experience in this life. And I think God is starting to call me to that. And for me, I always thought baseball was the outcome. Like that was it. It was like baseball was the end goal, but baseball, all it was the vehicle to impact many millions and millions of people. And so all I'm constantly doing is finding new vehicles that God's given me the ability to do so. So entrepreneurship is an incredible vehicle. Podcasting is an incredible vehicle. Just constant opportunities to rise up as a man and prove to yourself that you are that person. And ultimately, when you show up at your best, that forces everyone around you to show up your best because you don't take shit. Because like when we're around people, like we call them out. That's what brotherhood's about,
Absolutely.
right? It's like, hey, if you're not showing up as your best, like I'm doing you a disservice by not calling you out and
Truth.
keeping you accountable. It's all love, man.
Absolutely.
And I don't think I was given that accountability for a very long time. So that had to be built up through myself. And I know it's possible because a broken man was able to actually, accomplish some things. And so I've seen it through just hard work. And so just by showing up constantly in the face of adversity, it works. And so now all we're looking to do is find brothers and what you guys are doing. That's why we're such big believers in what you guys are doing. We're so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah.
We're so emotionally invested into it. And so, that's my answer.
Yeah. What I heard from both of you guys is a mix of physicality and spirituality.
Yep.
And I'd venture to believe that. And the reason is nothing against organized religion. And like, I love the church I go to. I love my pastor. But a lot of Christianity attracts feminine, spiritual men that don't have the physicality. And, just being real, you go to church, there's a lot of overweight, unhealthy men who probably don't even work out.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to stereotype, but it's just the truth. But on the other side, there's guys like Goggins who do hard shit, but don't have the spiritual nature, the nurturing spiritual nature of Jesus, right? Goggins and Jesus are completely different people, right? So what's the answer? And what I think you guys just nailed it. There's this, and I believe that physicality and spirituality have this weird mesh. I think what you said something there's something about being very physical that actually creates this element of spiritual, like enlightenment, right? I think that when they're combined together, there's something, and I think this is why you guys are really good at what you do, and it's why you guys are so far advanced in your business and communicators and leaders, is because you guys have this beautiful combination, both of you do, of physicality and spirituality. There's something to be told from that, and I'm just recognizing that in you two.
I appreciate you.
That's cool. That's cool.
We hear warrior brought up a lot, and like when you're reading in the Bible, they talk about warriors, and that's the way it is. It's like, and that doesn't mean that you have to just come in and just break everything down, which sometimes I end up doing. But it's it's not always like the warrior in the sense of like killing people or anything like that. But it's like there is warfare going on, both mentally, spiritually, especially amongst men, like pornography and all this stuff, things that I've battled through, things that all of us have battled through, and like something that like I'm glad that there's like a big spiritual revival coming through entrepreneurship in the new church, but like in the church that I grew up in, like nobody talked about that. Everyone was telling you to do this, but in behind the scenes they were doing some terrible shit.
Yeah.
Like I went to an all boys Catholic school in my 9th grade year, and it was like draconian. How
Wow.
it was like I had to leave because it was just so. It was a really good school, but it was just not what I wanted to be about. The headmaster got arrested for playing with kids. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And like they're telling you how to live your life and embody a
Right.
man. And it's like, dude, come on. And so like let's get real here, you know. And one thing I'll leave you with is that this book that I read, it's changed my life. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer.
I actually have it. I haven't read it.
Dude, it's so good. It's so good. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
He asked this question because a lot of people, like the trending thing is like, what would Jesus do, right? What would Jesus do if he were me? That's the next level of the question that I started to ask myself. And that's the ability to journal around that in every situation, because it's no longer like, what would Jesus do? Because I don't know what he would have done. Like
He's God in flesh.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what would he do if he were in the context of what I'm experiencing right now?
Wow.
Because you can't just revert back to the Bible for every single thing. Like you could do for a lot of things, but like they didn't have cell phones 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with that, it's like, how do I bring those biblical contexts to what I'm experiencing today? And it's been huge for me.
It's
So.
huge. Dang. What would Jesus do if he were me? I love that. Anything else to add on that, Landon?
I was just gonna say some of the most like level-headed and calm individuals I've ever met in my life were MMA fighters or like ex-Rangers, or I guess they're never an ex-Ranger, they're Rangers, guys on the teams, team guys. Like some of those guys have always been the most like even keel type of people that
Yep.
are capable of the highest level of physical output, but also, are just so down to earth and so level headed. At least has been my exposure and experience. So I truly go back to that point you were making earlier. Is just like doing hard things and betting on yourself is the true form of love to the universe. Because if you're showing up at your best, then you can truly deliver the best you can to the world that ultimately is enhancing everybody around you can touch. And,
Yeah, so good.
Yeah. So
Yeah, Jordan Peterson. I'm going to botch this completely, but he talks about a man is lethal and able to do dangerous things, but has the ability to control it. And I think that's part of that mix that you guys are speaking about is, physical can be violent if needed, warrior, right? But has the heart of Jesus. And that's what we're trying to build here at Crucible. Last thing I want to ask you guys this is, and we'll end with this because I think it's such an important question that most people don't understand, is what is purpose to you, and what are the stakes of a man not finding that in his life?
Wow.
It's a challenging question.
That is a very challenging question. And I struggle to answer that. I do.
Appreciate your honesty.
I think purpose, at least for me, is finding that state of joy that I had alluded to earlier, and constantly trying to bring presence and intention to it, and bringing people around that and community around that. And I think the consequence around not finding your purpose is emptiness. And I think we've all experienced it before, but just going down the rabbit holes is like, when I think of like lack of purpose, I look at like Hollywood and like
Yeah.
it's like evil.
100%.
Lack of purpose is evil. It's a contradiction to
Wow.
what God is looking for.
So good.
And so for me, that's purpose. I haven't figured out what my true purpose is, in my opinion, but all I know is that I am called, to continuously do great things and find really positive things that light me up. And those are things that I'm alluding to as purpose. I'm just going to go continuously explore those and get curious and be the best that I can be there and bring people along with me.
Wow. That's actually a really good answer.
Thank you.
What I loved what you said about that is that I don't know my purpose yet, but I know essentially what I heard is in the meantime, I'll be purposeful. I don't know my purpose yet because I think so many people are in that state because I think God calls the purpose to you at some point.
Yep.
But in the meantime, be purposeful. Man, that gave me goosebumps. So good.
Fundamentally, I believe my purpose is to be like Ed Milet calls it the one. Like that's like I lean into that heavy. Is like I really want to be that center of my family. Like that is my purpose. And I'm not married. I don't have kids yet, but I want to be in that light in the future where I am a great husband, great father, am able to have as many kids as possibly blessed to have.
Yeah.
And the family is reunited because of me, because my family is very broken right now,
Yeah.
very split. Purpose wise, like that's like a long-term purpose or vision, so to speak. But then something I've always said to myself, and I've actually never like shared this really, but I've always said to myself, and it's from what my dad had always told me, is like tomorrow's a new day. And I added to that over the last 5 or 6 years, like today is a new day and a new opportunity to be great, right? Tomorrow's a new day, a new opportunity to be great, and impact lives the best way you can and lead with love. Like love is the answer. I know it's a cliche saying, but I always joke with him and say it's like love is the answer. Honestly, just lead with love others, and every day is a new day and an opportunity to be great. And if you're not always going to win, you're not always going to come out on top every single day. That's the idea. So just the next day is another opportunity to be great and chase greatness.
Yeah, that aligns perfectly with 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind. Then he says, I think at the end he says, without love you have nothing. Mm-hmm. You have nothing.
Love is the absence of fear. That's the way that I've started to like. How can I combat how I feel when I'm fearful? Because I feel it a lot with love and bring love into those settings, and it goes away. Some people call it gratitude or love. And yeah, it's been really cool. The word says it all, man.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been an honor.
Been awesome.
You guys have already done awesome things for me in my life and my company, and I want any entrepreneur here to understand exactly where to find you guys and what to do with that. I mean, all things financial services, any financial legal question. I always tell people this. I teach from Tony Robbins' 7 Forces of Business Mastery to help business owners understand all the different compartments of their business, and I help them to rate those things and understand where they're at. And the one that I always point out is financial legal. I said, this is the one that every entrepreneur doesn't pay attention to that will take you down the fastest, either by lawsuit, either by not paying attention to your P&Ls and your statement of cash flows and things like this. And I've experienced real hardship it's why when I found you, I was like, dude, I clung to you because I was like, man, I've had bad experiences in my past in my companies doing millions of dollars in revenue and still leaking cash like crazy because I had no financial expert. And I think that entrepreneurs suck at being financial experts. And so I want to make sure everybody knows how to get connected to you guys. Can you guys just explain the best way to get connected to both of you guys and what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah, to your point though, business is numbers at the end of the day, right? Like we're using this business as a vehicle to help people get closer to God and help people financially and all these different things. But ultimately, if you have a business and the numbers aren't good, you're not going to have a business for much longer, right?
Truth.
Like God doesn't want you to be broke either. So with that, it's a huge piece of know your numbers and make sure that you're protected on that side.
Yeah.
To follow us, I'm very active on Instagram, Vaglica, so Avaglica. That we have a website, gfgsolutions.com. That's kind of under construction right now. AntonioVaglica.com. What about you?
My Instagram handle is first name dot last name Landon.Archangelo on Instagram. And then same website obviously. And beyond that, I mean, we didn't really talk specifically on what we do in general, just more advice based, but we do focus on like asset protection, tax strategy, tax advice, auditing the balance sheet and the numbers side of things, and helping people if they're looking to sell their business, helping them get the right professionals around them to make sure they're either selling it properly or passing it down to their team or their family properly. So those are kind of like the main areas we focus on.
Yeah, and so all the entrepreneurs listening to this is the thing that you'll neglect the most that will hurt you the most. And so highly recommend that you guys get connected with these two guys, have a conversation with them about how they can help you to protect yourself and to scale and grow and protect your money as you grow, so you can last for a long time and build that freedom that you've been looking for. So Landon and Antonio, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for flying out here, man. It wasn't last minute, but I mean, quick flight in and out just to do this. And I'm excited to break some bread with you guys tonight and to talk with you guys further. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being on the show. And for all the listeners, would love to hear your thoughts on the show. DM me in my personal Instagram any thoughts you guys had or anything that you learned, so we can continue to bring you advice and knowledge for the things that you need. See you guys on the next one.
Appreciate you, brother.